Hi and welcome back to the next video in the subject series. Now in this video we're not actually going to be covering a specific subject like the roundabout or a manoeuvre, so to speak. We're actually going to be looking at the skills of driving, so the transferable skills that you can pass on to your learners no matter what subject you're teaching. So let's have a look at what they are. So what are the transferable skills? Let me just zoom in on those. Like that. Yeah. So we've got five. The five transferable skills. We've got car control, i.e. your pupil's ability to control a car. Can they steer it? Can they make it stop? Do they still stall it? All of those things in control. Have they got control of the car and competent at that? We can look at awareness, their ability to be aware of their surroundings, and of course that will include the use of mirrors. Looking at their anticipation skills, so their ability to predict and anticipate what other road users might do. And from that, the next skill that we'd want to develop is their planning skills. So if they can predict and anticipate what other drivers might do, what are they going to do about it? What is the plan? What will they do in reaction to that to keep the car and themselves and everyone else safe? And then of course we've got judgment. How do they judge things? So if we just look at break down the judgment a little bit. So if you think of I don't know, following distance. So your pupil is following too closely. So we could be asking them how they judge that. What rules are there that they can use to help them judge that? So we could think about the 2-second rule, for example, and they would find that in the highway code. Other little tools, let's say they're struggling with their steering and they go around the corner and they cross their hands and they can't steer the steering wheel enough, so they are going wide onto the other side of the road. What tool, technique, method could we give them to help them with their steering? So we could look at pull push, for example, so they don't cross their hands and they can continually steer that wheel continuously without getting in the muddle and stay on their side of the road. Let's say another example, let's say in car control that they struggle with getting the correct gear. So the pupil intends to put it in second gear, but they accidentally keep getting fourth gear. So what tools have we got in the toolbox that we could pass on to help our pupils do that? So we could look at the palming method, for example. Let's take a manoeuvre. So if we were teaching a pupil how to reverse into a bay and finish between the lines, we would need our pupil, or we would need to develop the skills in our pupil to have good car control, that they've got the ability to make the car go very slow using the clutch, using the bite and making the car creep forwards. A skill that they might have learned when they were learning T-junctions and how to peep and creep if something was obstructing their view, or when they've done hill starts, for example. So we can take those car control skills to the bay park. Okay, what other skills will we be using for the bay park? Their awareness of their surroundings. Yeah, their anticipation of what other people might do. People might walk behind their car, pull out behind their car. What will they do? Will they stop or keep going? How can they improve their overall awareness? Could they put the windows down? So all these skills just coming into the bay park. And now your pupil might have all the above skills, that they can control the car nice and slow. They've got great awareness. They know what to do if they see people, but they struggle to get in between the lines and finish in the bay. So they need some help on judgment. So this is what you would be teaching them. You think, okay, they've got the other skills. They've got that. What they need my help with is on the specific judgment. So we could think about reference points, or giving them a method, a set of steps to follow to help them do that, if that's what they need. Not all pupils will need that. Some pupils will just be able to have a go and do that and judge that quite nicely for themselves. But what are you going to do with that pupil that is just struggling to find a way that kind of works? You know, if they keep finishing out outside the bay? Could we give them some kind of way of a reference point of what they need to look at, so next time when they do that on their own, they can judge it for themselves? And of course, once they can judge it from themselves, they can do it, practice, and get better. And so that's just to look at those transferable skills that you'll want to be teaching your pupils throughout all the subjects that you do. And if you take any driving mistake, a fault that could appear on the DL25, I'm pretty confident you'd be able to pigeonhole that fault into one of those boxes. So let's say, you know, the pupil got a fault for judgment overtaking because they overtook a cyclist and there just wasn't enough space, so they got a fault for it. Well, that would fit into judgment, wouldn't it? If they wasn't checking their mirrors coming off a roundabout, is that an awareness issue? So you can really pigeonhole faults into these areas, and that will help you focus your training and getting your pupil to think about what skills they've already got, what bits they can do themselves, and where they need your help to build and become a better, safer driver. So when you're teaching your subjects, think in terms of skills and transferable skills and passing that on. So let's just come out of that. Okay, so what else can we be thinking about whilst we're teaching our subjects? So let's have a look at the rules. So let's say your pupil is struggling, and it might be because they just don't understand what the rules are. If you was playing a board game with someone and you didn't explain the rules, how can you expect them to be any good at it? How can they win? Would that be unfair if they didn't know the rules? So rules, let's think about those rules. So let's think of an example of a situation where a pupil on a test has received a fault and it was because they just didn't know the rules. So let's say they've stopped in a yellow box. So they entered the yellow box, they were going ahead and their exit wasn't clear, and so they've broken a rule. They've stopped in the yellow box. Now, why did they do that? Did they do that because they didn't judge it very well? And they had just assumed that all the cars would carry on moving forwards and they wouldn't stop and therefore wouldn't have had a problem? Or is it that they just did not know? They thought, well, I wasn't aware that I wasn't allowed to stop in a yellow box. So your pupils need to know the rules of driving, help them with this, and then that will help them with their judgment, their awareness, their anticipation, their planning skills of driving. So let's just have a look at the highway code. Let's just pop a little example up there. So I've just randomly picked on the page that's dealing with pedestrian crossings. So when we look at the rules, you'll see, if you see must not, now in the actual printed highway code, they'll highlight these in red. So on the online version, they're just bold in black. So where you see must not or must, then there will be a rule, a law that relates to that. So for example, here, if I click through on this link here that relates to rule 191, that you must not park on a crossing or in the area covered by the zigzag line. So if we click through to that, and actually just so you know, if you do it on the online one, you can see what all this stands for. So this act here, that ZPPPCRGD, what does that mean? Not that you really need to know this as an instructor, but just for point of interest, if you hover on that, there is a rule, a law that relates to that, which is the zebra, pelican and puffing crossing regulations and general directions. That is a law. If we hover over this one, the RTRA, that is the Road Traffic Regulations Act. So they're all laws backed up. So you're not expected to know the laws, you just need to know the rules. But if you do want to click through, then you can go to the specific Road Traffic Regulation Act of 1984 when it's been updated, and this will give you the full information. So just so you know that it's there for you to. Oh no, I've just clicked back too many times. So yeah, so I've lost my highway code, but that doesn't matter. So let's just get rid of that. So yeah, so think about the rules, think about the signs, the road markings, priorities. Do your pupils understand priorities? And we've just talked about there that the must and the must not are backed up by law, but also think about where it says should and should not. So you should take caution when driving through pedestrian crossings, for example, where there's queuing traffic on the other side. So that is not a must, but you should. So if your pupils are not taking due care and attention when there's queuing traffic on the opposite side of the road and they're driving through at speed, not anticipating that there could be a pedestrian on that crossing that they're about to run over. So are they aware of that? Do they know the rules? Are they anticipating it? And their plan should be to slow down and be prepared to stop. Now, if they fail to do that, they're going to fail their driving test because they're not driving with due care and attention. So just be mindful of the rules, the must nots, the musts, the shoulds and the should nots. But the musts and the must nots are backed up by law. Okay, so that covers the rules of driving, and your pupils will need to know the rules to be able to do this stuff above, won't they? They will need to know, be aware of those rules, anticipate that kiddie could be on a pedestrian crossing, and planning of what they do. So they will all link in together. So like I say, whilst you're teaching your subjects, if you're teaching pedestrian crossings, just cover some of the rules with your pupils. If you're covering roundabouts, look up the section in the highway code on roundabouts and just gen up on the rules, the musts and the must nots, and then you can teach your pupils and give them full information so they know what they can do, what they can't do, what they should do, etc. Okay, and just finally on this, our routines. So I know we've talked about the routines frequently throughout this, but just making sure your pupils have robust routines to aid their learning, so they can, rather than a sea of information and things that they've got to try and remember, using routines is just a nice easy way to help your pupils recall information and act on it. So if they're doing their compet drill, they can refer to the DSSM or DHSSM, whichever methods you're using. So they think, oh yeah, I've got a set of things to do. When they move off, can they use the POM routine? So if they're doing that every single time, they won't be rolling back on hills. They'll be getting it just right. Okay. Scalp, for example, safe, convenient and legal places. Of course, we have to have it in there, the MSM, the routine that we're going to be using, and breaking the M into PSL and then LADA into the look. And you'll find that obviously in driving the essential skills. But some trainers, especially if you're dealing with more advanced trainers, some people might be looking at IPSCA and roadcraft, which is another routine. But for your learners, for the DVSA, my recommendation would be to stick to MSPSL. But if you are working with police trainers or ambulance trainers, then they will be teaching their students IPSCA, and so that is what they need to do. They wouldn't change it for the sake of the DVSA who are testing it, because it's got to be client-centered. It's got to be the routines that they would be using. And yeah, more advanced drivers, you can to take into another lesson, you could introduce IPSCA. But really, I would stick to the MSPSL. Just keep it simple. And yeah, so we've got routines that will help your pupils break things down. So you're looking at junctions. You're looking at their decision making to go at a junction. You can break that down into LADA, and that will really help them with all of the above, the things we've said about with their judgment, to look, assess, decide, act. So just to sort of, before I sort of end this video, because it's going to be a little bit shorter than normal, just think about these judgment things, because these are going to be really important when you do your standards check and your part 3, that you've got go-to, like, things in your toolbox that you can go to help your pupils. So do they know how to judge things? Like if they're at a T-junction and they're hesitating, Do they know how to judge that? The walk across, drive across rule, for example. If they're hesitating at a roundabout, how are they judging a safe gap? I always think of a safe gap as being from 3 o'clock round to 7 o'clock as the safe gap. If there's anyone in there, don't go. See what they're doing first. If they're outside of that, then we've got a gap. We could proceed. If they're steering too close to the curb, how are they judging that? And these are, I can speak like locally from my experience with the examiners for part 3s and standard check. A question that the examiner will always be looking for is when a pupil is not judging something, like following distance, for example, is take control first, say look, back off, get a safe distance, and then the next question should be, how are you judging that? And if they say, oh yeah, no, it's the 2-second rule, isn't it? Okay, well let's show me that and get them to do it. If they're hesitating at the roundabout, okay, you can jump in and help, say no, wait here, wait there. But then follow up with the question, well, how are you judging that? And if they're like, well, actually, I'm not sure, okay, take some time, explain it, refresh, or they might never have heard of the remedy, the judgment solution that you've got, and go through it and get them to practice it. But yeah, just remember that as a really key question is, rather than assuming that they don't know about the 2-second rule, or they don't know about walk across, drive across, or reference points for helping them to a bay park, or whatever it is, ask them, how are you judging that? And then you've got your way in, because if they know and they've got a way that they do, they might have their own way that their dad taught them in a car park. Oh yeah, no, my dad said do it like this. Okay, well try that, see if it works, because it might work. So yeah, that would be a go-to question. How are you judging that? Before you make assumptions and start jumping in with solutions, find out. This is part of your analysis skills, to find out the root cause of the problem. So anyway, so that is really the end of this video. So as always, I will see you in the next video. There will be questions on this video, so make sure you answer those. And thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.